the November 10th minutes.
So moved.
So moved, Dolan.
And the second from?
Elmer, I guess, if I didn't get the first one.
Okay, yep, Dolan and then Elmer, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions or corrections?
Gilmore abstention.
Jarvis
Okay.
abstention.
Okay. Any other corrections or changes to those? Seeing none. We have no public hearings today. Let me just reiterate, there is no public forum at this meeting. If there's any invited guests, we might call on you to speak. Also, we have a lot of people that are up for appointment and reappointment from various boards. I will take a moment to ask if any of them want to talk with us. Don't feel that you have to. The other thing is, if you are watching, I would appreciate you muting your microphones except for my committee. And if we start to have bandwidth problems, I'll ask some of you to cut off your video, except for my committee. But right now we're looking pretty good. Counselor,
Can I interrupt?
yes.
Can I interrupt for just a moment? Dawn Moran wrote in chat that she's recording the meeting.
Okay. So, Dawn Moran, citizen, is recording the meeting. Thanks, Dawn. Thank you, Counselor Gilmore. All right. Counselor Jarvis. Our first is the mayor's year-end appointments. There are 8 appointments. If you could read that notice for us.
I will, and at any time when I need a hand with a name, feel free to jump in.
I'll help you with
And I
Toluca.
apologize ahead of time for butchering anybody's name. The city council moved that in order the city that the Greenfield City Council pursuant to Charter Section 2-10 affirms the following appointments by the mayor. Samantha MacGyver, Board of Health, term expires December 31st, 2024. Heidi Weeks, Crossroads Cultural District Committee, term expires December 31st, 2024. Hannah Brookman, Greenfield Local Cultural Council, term expires December 31st, 2024. Scott Conti, Historical Commission, term expires June 30th, 2023, to finish out the term for Terry Ruggles. Now, Zordia. Did somebody say your last name? Okay, thank you. Mayor's Task Force Against Domestic Violence, representative of the Franklin County DA's office, designated by the FC District Attorney as per Charter Section 6-24C II, term expires December 31st, 2023. Dave Pfister, Planning Board alternate, term expires December 31st, 2024. Okay, this one I'm going to need a hand with. Danica Hoshire, is that how you say your last name? Nobody's responding. Can everybody hear me?
She might not be here.
Okay. Recreation Commission term expires December 31st, 2024. Mary Phillips, Recreation Commission alternative, term expires December 31st, 2024. That's the end of them.
All right, the motion, can I get a second?
Second.
Motion was seconded by Counselor Gilmore. I'll open the floor first to my committee. Does the committee have any questions or anything on any of these appointments at this point? Okay. If you are present and you intended to say hello to us tonight and you are on that list, if you could type in the chat box your name, and I will recognize you, and you could say a couple words. You're not being asked to, but if you would like to, this is an opportunity for any of those people that were mentioned previously. All right, I'm not seeing any of them. Is there any discussion from the council on any of these nominees? I just would like to say that I appreciate when we have new people stepping up to these committees. We all know they're a lot of work, and we are very lucky in Franklin County and Greenfield specifically to have such participation in all these boards and committees, and we appreciate everyone's time. Is there anyone from the Appointments and Ordinance Committee that would like to speak? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we will send a positive, unanimous recommendation to affirm those nominees. And once again, thank you for agreeing to be part of our government here in Greenfield. Now, Councilor Jarvis, are you ready for this one?
I'm not really looking this one over,
Um,
but we'll give it a go.
I could have called on Councilor Elmer and you could have watched him. So
We'll give it the old college try.
on page 36 of the agenda, you have a list of 19 reappointments for various boards. Councilor Jarvis, if you could read that motion.
I will give it my shot. Move that it ordered that the Greenfield City Council pursuant to Charter Section 2-10 affirms the following reappointments by the mayor. Randall Bernard, Board of License Commissions, term expires December 31st, 2024. Douglas Mayo, Commission on Disability Access, term expires December 31st, 2024. Marcia Staples Love, Council of Aging, term expires December 31st, 2024. Karen McCormick, Council of Aging, term expires December 31st, 2024. Michael McInner, is that how you? Sorry if I'm butchering your names. Franklin County Tech School, term expires December 31st, 2024. Roby, yeah, thanks for this one. Rabbi, how do you say this? Somebody say this for me. Somebody bail me out.
Rabbi Andrea Cohen-Keener.
Thank you for the help. Greenfield Local Cultural Council, term expires December 31st, 2024. And Hannah's last name, somebody help me out there.
Rex Sheffin.
Thank you. Greenfield Local Cultural Council, term expires December 31st, 2024. John Pasiglia.
Pasiglia.
Celia.
See, thank you for your help. Sorry, John. Historical Commission, term expires December 31st, 2024. Douglas Mayo, Historical Commission, term expires December 31st, 2024. Mo Lyons, Human Rights Commission, term expires December 31st, 2024. Irene Woods, Mayor Task Force Against Domestic Violence, term expires December 31st, 2024. Keaton Von Smith, Mayor's Designee, Mayor's Task Force Against Domestic Violence, term expires December 31st, 2023. George, little help with his last name. I don't want to.
Palimpsest.
Thank you. Planning Board, term expires December 31st, 2024. Amy McMahon, Planning Board, term expires December 31st, 2024. Ed Berlin, Public Library Trustees, term expires December 31st, 2024. Joe Ruggieri, Greenfield Library Board of Trustees, term expires December 31st, 2024. Butch Hawkins, Public Safety Commission, term expires December 31st, 2024. Little help with her first name, please.
Is it Mert?
Yeah, okay. Wilson, reappointed to the alternative full member, Recreation Commission, term expires December 31st, 2024. Gene Wall, Redevelopment Authority, term expires December 31st, 2024. And I apologize for butchering anybody's name. That's the end of the list.
The motion has been made. Can I get a second?
Second.
The motion's been made and seconded. Is there any questions before I open the floor to anyone that from the committee? Okay. I'm going to recognize George in a second. I have been saying that name. I just want you all to know for 20 years and watching people have fun with that one, because it's not the first time we talked about George on the floor at this council. All right, George, welcome once again. The mic is open, so if you'd like to say hello, we'd love it.
Well, thanks, Dan. I appreciate that. And I actually put something in the chat that I always understood it was an expectation that any appointee come before the committee and make themselves available. And I don't have anything else to say. My previous years of service on the planning board would hopefully speak for me. So thank you very much.
George, I just want to say, I know I started off in a light way with that, but I appreciate all your years of service, and I've seen your name read in various boards and committees since I was on this council in 2001, I think. So I still appreciate it, George. Thank you. Is there anyone else that Councilor Jarvis read that would like to say hello to us? You can put your name in the chat.
Excuse me.
Councilor Aller?
Yeah, I was gonna ask George if he could tell us how to spell his name, sung to the tune of the Mickey Mouse Club.
No, I think we'll skip over that, Councilor Elmer. But unless George is dying to do it, then I don't want to take anything away from him. Okay. Is there anyone else? I don't see anyone else in the chat.
So could I also say, I think that it's a great idea, as George mentioned, that appointees come, because if we do have questions, especially for new folks, and we don't understand their qualifications, and they don't have a record for us to review, it would be nice if we could invite them to these meetings, just in case we do. I mean, especially if we take care of them early in the evening.
I believe, as George started with, in the old days, they came before us. If they were going to be on an appointment from the original mayor of Greenfield, they came before us, and we spoke with them individually, and that changed over the years. I asked that this committee ask any questions ahead of time, and I try to get answers. I did have a couple of questions proposed on some things today, but they were not on specific candidates. They were more in general questions, which we will address later on this evening. Is there anyone else that would like to speak with us that's any of those lists? I'll go back to the committee. Is there anyone with comments from appointments and ordinances? Anyone like to add anything? Seeing none, feel free to chime in if you will. Once again, I'd like to thank all of these people, because these are reappointments, which means not only did we get them to say yes once or twice, they have agreed to once again serve the community, which as we know, sometimes it sounds fun the first time, but the second time, not so much. But we appreciate them stepping up and helping to make this community what it is. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we will send a positive, unanimous recommendation to affirm the slate that we read. Thank you all again. All right. Ordinance to prohibit the use of non-emergency unmuffled comprehension release engine brakes. Let me tell you where we are with this. Councilor Wheeler and I had a discussion. We have sent this out to public safety and to DPW for their opinions before we move forward. I did speak with the DPW on this topic, and his concerns were that of public safety, having to do with the load weights on some of the inclines, on some of the roads that we specifically talked about, which were Burniston Road and parts of Deerfield Street, where if someone has 100,000-pound load, and they have to use those brakes, how is that figured if it's an empty load or a full load? So a lot of it goes back to finding out the enforcement piece, which will come from our public safety side of things. So Councilor Wheeler and I weren't planning on voting this through this evening or forwarding it. It's still in the works. We'll wait for that in the future. Councilor Wheeler, anything to add? I don't like to speak for you, but I just want to make sure you and I are still on the same page.
Thanks. Yeah, no, we're on the same page. I would say I hope that well, I should talk to Marlo is what I should do, because compression engine brakes are additional. Generally they're used in place of the regular air brakes that the truck has. And I mean, not only does the ordinance specify that the compression brakes may be used in an emergency, but also if a load was so big, the regular air brakes are generally sufficient. But procedurally, this is my last A&O meeting as a counselor. So I was wondering if any sitting A&O members or sitting counselors, I guess I was wondering if you, Chairman Gwynn, needed an advocate for this, or whether you intend to continue it through the process in the new year.
I will see this through.
Thanks. And if you do want me to attend as a citizen, I'm happy to.
No, yeah, and I think a discussion on the braking system, because it has to do with overheating the regular braking system versus with those brakes with a certain load weight, it can overheat the brakes. And if you overheat the brakes with a heavier load, then you have complete brake failure. So that was the question. And it was safety and enforcement. So we're still, and I'd like to hear from enforcement, before we move forward, but I will make sure we get those answered and that it comes before the A&O committee, and whoever that makeup is. But I will, even as a counselor, I know I'm not as a counselor going away, so I'll bring it up as a counselor if I'm not as a chair or on this committee.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Okay, you bet. So we'll move forward on that. That brings us up to the potential amendments and modifications for the Greenfield City Charter review. Councilor Wheeler, are you hanging around for a moment, or are you going to be here, or are you leaving me?
I can stay for a little bit. I was just trying to see exactly which changes we're
Well,
talking about.
we were going to work on 6 this evening. We have gone through through 613, so we were going to start with 614. But if the counselors looked at their email in the last 12 hours, the school committee came through with their recommendation. We've been waiting for the school department to weigh in on section 4. And basically, they said they agree with the changes as presented by the Charter Review Committee. And that's what we were waiting for. We didn't want to change things for that. So my question to Councillor Forgy is, Councillor Forgy, do we want to proceed with 614 as we were right off there, or do we want to go through Article 4 with Councillor Wheeler here this evening, knowing that Chair Peretti agreed with Councillor Wheeler and the recommendations that came out of the school department committee? You're muted. Councillor Forgy, you're muted.
Okay, it makes sense to me to go ahead with the school department
Okay.
pieces.
I'm not sure you have those in front of you, Councillor Wheeler, because this kind of came out of.
It's not.
It's not earth-shattering. They're pretty general. I have them in front of me. Councillor Forgy, do you have them in front of you?
I do somewhere here.
I told you to be ready for 6 and not 4. Any Councillor Wheeler, and if what we usually do is we talk about the changes, and then if you can recall the comments, because section 4 was kind of one you worked on. Am I speaking correctly?
Yeah, I think so. Boy, it's been a while.
Yeah, I understand.
And if I can pull them up, I
The
might.
charter
even
that
remember.
never dies. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have them in my email somewhere.
So they're here, and I've got the strike-through version in front of us. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. So Article 4, School Department, Section 4-1A, I don't see any changes in that section, Councillor Forgy, is that correct?
That's correct.
4-2, election and term. All right. The first one would be, there's a suggestion to add vice chair and remove secretary. Is that, or was that when we were talking about council?
That's council.
Okay.
This is to add both, I think. Vice chair.
Is it-
Because I have secretary crossed out here, but that could have been council. As soon as, so school committee chair, add vice chair and secretary, but is secretary, is that what we're asking to do?
That was the suggestion.
Okay. And that suggestion, they said they agreed with that. So, okay. The second asterisk here is saying similar to change in section, similar to the change in section 2-2, which is 2-4, is suggested that the phrase beginning as soon as practical, oh, here we go, and through the word or be deleted and the sentence on the first business day of the new year. So that's the same thing we changed for council. We could move forward with that, correct? It would be striking the on the first business day of the new year as soon as and through the word or to be deleted and the sentence on the first business day of the new year. Are you with me, Councillor Forgy or
Yeah.
Councillor Wheeler? Is that where we are?
Yes.
Okay. Third asterisk, discussion about whether to add the mayor shall not be eligible to chair. The committee notes a majority of the public we heard from during the public hearing did not support the mayor as the chair. So I would say that we will add the line, the mayor shall not be eligible to be chair. Correct? We're going to have to read these all into motion shortly. I'm just making sure we're reviewing this. That is still 4-2, section A. And except
Well, the debate, if I could.
yeah, no, of course, this is your show.
The debate was to exclude the mayor from being chair.
Yep.
Would not. There was concern that the mayor would not be an equal member of the school of the school committee. The other side was that if the mayor was the chair, there was a lot of power that was being consolidated, in being a chair. So this, I don't know what the school department, what the review from the school department said, that there were no changes. I don't know how that plays out. The committee made a note, but I don't know if there's any language. I mean, if there's a decision. So I think it's up to A&O and the council to make that decision.
Okay, we can weigh in on that. This is new section 4-2. That's later on. Okay, so we are, okay, so let's stop. 1, 2, 3. One of its members, oh, okay, I see. It's one of its members to serve as a school committee chair. Discussion about whether to add the mayor shall not be eligible to be chair. Okay, so we're still in the right piece. What's the opinion of the counselors present on that piece? I'm just going to rely on the piece that says there was a debate during the committees. Otis can, Counselor Wheeler can talk about this, but I also see the part where it says a majority of the public we heard from during the public hearing did not support the mayor as chair. Counselor Wheeler, do you want to refresh your memory on that piece?
I'll chime in. Sure. Yeah, I remember the conversation. And I think it's accurately presented in the report. Basically, the Charter Review Committee did not come to a place where it felt strong enough to make a recommendation. But as the report states, the members of the public who spoke at meetings did not want the mayor as chair. Speaking personally, I don't generally think that a mayor should act as chair, but I was against changing the language. I thought it was unnecessary, and it sort of took some flexibility and authority away from the school committee, was what I thought. And there are cities and towns like Northampton where the mayor, as part of the position, is the chair. And I don't have experiences with how that works. So that's
okay. Thank you, Councilor Wheeler. All right, so to my committee, what's our feeling? Not to change it and just leave the charter for interpretation, or to add it and say that the mayor shall not be eligible to be chair? They said the school committee said they agree with the charter committee's recommendation, but as Councilor Ford, you pointed out, there is no recommendation. It left it open. Councilor Jarvis?
Yeah, I believe I agree with Councilor Wheeler on this. I don't believe that the mayor should be chair. I believe that it would give the mayor too much power over the committee, being the mayor and the chair of the school committee. So I would say add it. So there's no confusion, there's no interpretation, it's black and white. The mayor will not be chair. That's it. I'm done.
Councilor Dolan?
Yeah, I was surprised when I learned that this was a possibility. It does seem like, too much consolidation of power to me. I've been checking other cities and it seems like it's actually pretty common to have the mayor as chair by default. So that makes me think twice, but I would lean towards, if only to protect the mayor's time for mayoral duties, changing the language so that the mayor is not able to be chair.
Councilor Allen.
I-
And then Councilor Gilmore, if I skipped you, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll wait.
I agree. The mayor's got plenty of power. It seemed to be an issue with the public that showed up. This is a simple change. I would add that sentence.
Councilor Gilmore.
So I agree with everything that's been said, but thinking out to possible situations in the future, we should probably leave it open enough so that if the chair of the school committee is absent and the mayor is not the chair, but chairs a meeting, just because we wouldn't want them, if there was ever a situation where they didn't have a quorum, I want to make sure that the mayor is able to chair a meeting if the mayor is like the co-chair. What are they? They don't have vice presidents. What do they have for
They have a vice chair.
They do have a
Yep,
vote.
they-
vice chair? Vice
Yep,
chair.
they do. So the vice chair, I guess this would only preclude the mayor from being the chair. If the mayor was the vice chair, they're not the chair, even in the acting.
Exactly. So I would like to spell it out that they can be the vice chair so that people don't confuse the noun with the verb.
I hear you. Anyone else have it? I'm going to jump off of. I agree that I don't think the mayor. My first blush is I don't think the mayor should be the chair. The chair consistently, but we have the advantage at this moment as we have a past mayor here, and there was a moment in your life that you almost became the chair of the school committee because there was some dysfunction, and at one point there was talk about voting you in as the chair of the school committee. Am I correct in that memory?
Yes, you are, Councillor Gwynn.
So Councillor Forgy, give us your, you have an advantage that none of us have. You were the mayor. What's the take on this? You never were the chair, but there was rumor that you were going to be voted as chair at one point.
Yes, that's correct. I'm looking at this in two ways. First of all, I would the background of all of this is that the mayor or the city representative represented by the mayor as the chief administrative officer would have a place on the school committee so that they could represent the budgetary and financial sides of the city as far as the dollars went, but also that they could also have a say in voting on teacher contracts and also on policy pieces as well. So it was a communication piece to put the mayor on the school committee. I don't know what mayor in their right mind, including myself, would ever want to be chair of the school committee. It's difficult enough to be the mayor. And I would caution that when we say a majority of the public did not support the mayor as chair, I would caution that we're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of people here that wrote in to tell us what was going on. In a way, I'd like to protect the integrity of the mayor's position on the school committee, making that person equal. They're all elected, and if you pick out one and lessen that electability or preclude them from doing something, it's not an equal situation. So I can tell you in the last administration, however, I believe that the mayor was chair of the school committee at some point. So I understand both sides of the argument. I just feel strongly that the language should stay the same, so the mayor is an equal member of the school committee.
Okay.
That's my opinion. I don't get to vote, but that's
No.
my background and that's my
No,
experience.
I asked for it and you
Yes,
answered
you
it.
did.
I don't agree with you, but I did ask for it.
Okay.
So back to the committee. At first blush, I think, we sounded as if we think that we should add the line, the mayor shall not be eligible to be chair, but could serve as vice chair. Is that what I was getting from that? Or?
Well, that was just my thought. I just want to make sure that, I think I don't necessarily have a problem with the mayor being chair of the school committee, except that I feel like it's good for leadership positions to be shared around. Because when you put more heads together, you come up with better ideas. But but because of quorum and sometimes we have vacancies on the school committee, I wouldn't want that to become an issue. That's all.
Counselor Jarvis?
Dan, I don't think we need to add that she can be vice chair because no place in the vice chair language
Does it preclude
she
it?
can't be. It doesn't preclude her from being or him from being vice chair. So I don't think we need to add that there. It isn't spelled out in the vice chair position.
We've said, I think Counselor Dolan, we've said that before, not to add things that we don't have to undo things that aren't there. Counselor Dolan?
Yeah, similar theme. I think the language as it is sufficient. We should distinguish between holding the position of chair, which is a year-long elected position, and chairing a meeting, which anyone can step up if need be to chair a meeting still without being the chair of the school committee. So I think the language as it is works.
Okay. Counselor Elmer, are you feeling that we're on the?
Yeah, I think we're
okay. We have one more piece of Section A, and then we will take them piece by piece and read them as suggested. Suggested to add one of its members to serve as secretary, all to serve for the ensuing year. Counselor Wheeler, was there any? They said they agreed with the recommendation. That's a recommendation. Do you see any issue there from the committee?
No, I don't think we talked about this too much. It seemed we thought it was a reasonable suggestion and, wanted to take the school committee's recommendation either way. I think it was one of those, things that's in their policy manual, but not in the charter that we thought probably maybe should be in the charter.
Perfect. And that's why when I stumbled a little bit on the vice chair and secretary in the beginning, because it's hard to have it in the beginning if you didn't decide to add it in the end. So that's where I think was the problem in trying to read this. So, all right. So that is Section 4-2, Section A. Do we want to make this in a form of a motion? There are 4 asterisk points. We have decided to add the line vice chair and secretary. In asterisk 2, similar to the change in section, I have 2-2, but it says 2-4. It is suggested that the phrase, adding that phrase, we just want to read it in there. How did we do it last time? Counselor Dolan, do you remember? Counselor Forgy?
It should be 2-2. That's a typo.
Okay. I wrote 2-2 and I'm glad because that means I actually know what I'm talking about. So that's a good thing. All right. So do we want to just read these as separate motions for these 4 pieces or one continuous motion? One continuous motion?
Yeah.
Okay. And then asterisk 3 was we were going to pick up the line, the mayor shall not be eligible to be chair. And then at the end, add after the word vice chair, and one of its members to serve as secretary, all to serve for the ensuing year, which is already there. Okay, can someone read this in the form of a motion? I can't,
There-
but
I'll try it. There's some
All
moving
right.
pieces here. So I
Counselor,
move.
yeah, Counselor Gilmore, just feel free to break it down by the asterisk if you get, if it seems a little bit walky. All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I move that we add the language vice chair and secretary as annotated in the document that we're all looking at. And that that we also add the phrase as soon as practicable and throughout
No.
the word or be deleted and the sentence begin with on the first business day of the new year. Also, that we add that the mayor will not be eligible to be chair of the school committee.
Hold on. Shall not.
Shall not. Sorry, I'm trying to skip around and paraphrase here.
No, I'm just want to make sure
And that
because
we
will and
add-
shall is one of those.
Yes. This is why I didn't become a lawyer.
No, you're.
And then we add the language and one of its members to serve as secretary, comma, all to serve for the ensuing year.
One fix there.
Please.
Counselor Elmer.
Yeah, I think the change would be after election and term dash on the first business day of the new year. After the school committee members elect have been qualified following each city election as provided. Isn't that right? Don't they want the sentence to start with on the first business day of the year?
It says, yeah, to be deleted
Yes.
in the sentence begin with on the first day of the new year. That is correct, Counselor Elmer.
Would it make more sense if I read it with the additions?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to do this slowly because I have to bounce a little bit. Okay, so section 4-2, school committee chair, A, election and term. On the first business day of the new year, after the school committee members elect have been qualified following each city election, remove the word or.
Put a period.
The school committee shall organize by electing one of its members to serve as school committee chair. Hold on a second.
The mayor, that would come in right there.
The mayor shall not be eligible to be chair.
Yep.
And one of its members to serve as secretary, all to serve for the ensuing year. That sounds disjointed, but it might have also been how slow I got there.
We're good.
Did I get that right?
I believe you did.
Okay.
All those, any changes?
I'll second that motion.
The motion's been made in second. Any discussion on the motion? Because all of our discussion before was getting to the motion. Counselor Dolan?
Can I suggest that we move the phrase "the mayor shall not be eligible to be chair" to the end as a separate sentence? It kind of interrupted the list in a way that could introduce ambiguity. So the language would be, and perhaps this is a friendly amendment if we can do that.
Don't worry, no friendly amendments, but just
I'll just make the amendment.
correct.
Starting with one of its members to serve as school committee chair, one of its members to serve as school committee vice chair, and one of its members to serve as secretary, all to serve for the ensuing year, period. The mayor shall not be eligible to be chair, period.
Much
Yeah.
better.
I will need a second if this is not a friendly amendment.
I'll second the amendment.
All those, any discussion on the current motion? Anyone? Seeing none. All those in favor as the motion read by Counselor Gilmore and then followed up by Counselor Dolan?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we will send a positive unanimous recommendation on the section changes.
I'm sorry. I think that was the vote on the amendment. I think we still have to vote
Okay.
on the main motion.
I think you are correct. So
Yeah.
the amendment passes. Now we are going to go back to the motion made by Counselor Gilmore as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, now we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation for the motion. We don't have to send a recommendation for the amendment because it's been amended on the floor here. Thank you. All right. Moving on. Section 4-2B. There was a discussion whether or not the provision is consistent with school committee policy, which as of this date states the chair has the power to appoint subcommittees subject to committee approval and make chairperson assignments. Current charter overrides school committee policy, suggested to add in accordance with school committee policy manual to allow for consistency. That looks like housekeeping, Counselor Wheeler.
Where does that phrase go?
I think where the asterisks are, so it would say the school committee chair shall appoint in accordance with school committee policy manual, right? All members of all committees of the school committee, whether special or standing. Is that where it looks like it would go? That looks like it to
I
me.
think that would work. Yeah.
Okay. That is all in that section that's being asked to change. Any discussion? Seeing none, someone make that motion.
So moved.
So moved. Second, Gilmore.
That motion's been made and seconded to change as suggested. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation for that. The next asterisk is new section 4-2D. That's the secretary. We just put the secretary in above. This is giving the secretary their ability to be the secretary. I don't think there's anything in there that's controversial. Any discussion, Counselor Wheeler? Once again, this is just, if you're gonna have a secretary, it's gotta talk about the secretary. Someone want to put that in the form of a motion? We would be adopting section 4-2D.
So I move that,
Go ahead, Sheila. I'm sorry.
okay, I move that we adopt new section 4-2D, secretary. Do you need me to read the whole thing for the record? Okay.
No,
Seconded, Elmer.
motion's been made and seconded to add section 4-2D secretary as it appears on the recommendation from the charter committee. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send that as a positive unanimous recommendation. I see no changes to 4-3. There's no changes to 4-4. 4-5. It was recommended at the charter committee public hearing to name standing committees for the school committee in the charter and to add the language above its lawful control of its buildings and grounds as stated in MGL Chapter 43, Section 33A. It was decided to let the school committee deal with this within its own policies and not be added to the charter. However, it may be prudent to add here the language as required by and allowed by law. So they're asking us, Councilor Wheeler, it sounds like they're not saying to add all of that, but maybe add just the line as required by and allowed by law.
Yeah, and I guess you would keep the necessary and prudent piece. This we didn't discuss this too much. It's pretty straightforward.
So it would say to make all reasonable rules and regulations for the management of the public school system and for conducting the business of the school committee as required by and allowed by law. And may be deemed necessary or desirable. I'm not sure how to fit that in. That's a weird sentence. The business of the school committee as may be deemed necessary or desirable as required by and allowed by law. Put it at the
Yes.
end.
Yes.
I think that flows more better. So, any discussion on that? Let's have someone read section 4-5B, adding that as required by and allowed by law to the end of that sentence after the word desirable. Sorry, we could have made that a motion, but I can't. Go ahead.
I'll do that. I move that we make this change to section 4-5B to make all reasonable rules and regulations for the management of the public school system and for conducting the business of the school committee as may be deemed necessary and desirable and as required by and allowed by law.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, we'll send a positive unanimous recommendation to change 4-5B. All right, this one's a little more lively. 4-6, filling of vacancies. Whenever a vacancy shall occur in the office of school committee member, added here more than 90 days before the next regular biennial election.
Mhm.
Councilor Wheeler, is this ringing any bells?
Yeah, there was more discussion around this one because in recent memory there have been vacancies filled, and there's been some sort of confusion or difficulty. That's the word. There's been some difficulty in filling the vacancies according to the charter, the way it's written now. So if you have specific questions, maybe I can try to answer them.
Is there any questions on this? I'm just trying to figure out how it flows here, but remember the school committee wants to adopt these recommendations as stated by Chair Peretti. Any discussion here?
I'm
So-
wondering if this matches the language we have for city councilors. Because I thought there was a different time frame for city council.
Yeah, there could be. I mean,
They're separate bodies, so maybe they don't need to have the same exact rules, but
they don't. Nope. They're completely independent. They can have their own rules, offices. They can do as they want, according to charter. So I think it's simple enough that we add that shall occur in the office of school committee. I'm just trying to figure out how it fits here. Councilor Ford, did you see this?
Yes, I do. So basically, I don't know what the rule is for the council, okay? But I think it's just asking that after whenever a vacancy shall occur in the office of school committee, of school committee members, more than 90 days before the next regular biennial election, the vacancy shall be filled by the remaining members of the school committee. Then it go, and then
Then
they want,
there's, okay.
then they want that by the remaining members of the school committee replaced with according to the procedures outlined in the school committee policy manual at the time of such vacancy. That's what they're asking. That's the suggestion. Okay. Then the next one is right after that, persons elected to fill be deleted, and instead persons filling a vacancy be inserted, since the school committee policy may include appointment rather than election. So that's the word. And then after the next piece of paperwork change goes down to the bottom of the sentence after vote, bottom of the paragraph. And I don't know, the council probably wants to think about this a little bit. They're suggesting after discussion by the committee about who should break a tie from an impasse and trying to think of other options, the committee decided that the city council president was an acceptable choice. So this is, I'm not familiar, but there must have been some situation in the past where they did not have enough members to break a tie. And so they're basically asking for the city council president, another elected official. That, I don't know, that could be, I see.
Counselor, there's a lot of things entering here, but Counselor Wheeler, can I ask you a question before we get to this one, which makes no sense to me at all, because as a past council president, I walk into a school committee meeting where I have no idea what they've been talking about for 6 months and say, I'm going to break this tie because, the person that read it is wearing yellow. I mean, I don't know. Here's my question. When you look up in asterisk 2, it said by the remaining members of the school committee, and to add in its place according to the procedures outlined in the school committee policy manual at the time of such vacancy. Let me talk from the mandate from the state. A committee, whether it be council or school committee, their rules cannot override the charter. The charter is the document that overrides the thing. The charter is it can be broken down. Remember, committees can be more specific, but it can't override the charter. I'm just wondering, when it says, according to the procedures outlined in the school committee policy manual at the time of the vacancy, does anyone feel like we're getting into the point where their rules of policy end up being part of the charter? Is that a gray area? Councilor Wheeler or Councilor Forgy, as this was your forte, and Councilor Gilmore. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out, anytime you let
I think Councilor Elmer had something to say. He looked very enthusiastic.
And Councilor Dolan too.
Councilor Elmer.
It seems what they're trying to do is take it out of the charter and leave it in something that's more flexible, their rules at the particular time. I don't see a conflict. I see the principle of, let's not put it in a thing that can't be changed for 10 years. Let's put it in the bailiwick of the rules that we have control over. That seems to be the general principle in this paragraph.
I agree. We do that with ordinances too, in other areas.
Yep. That's the minutia is usually done by the ordinance or the thing. I just don't want it to appear that the charter is being overridden by a committee policy, which we have to watch. But I agree with Councilor Elmer at this point. Councilor Wheeler, did you have anything to add? And Councilor Dolan also.
I was just going to try to provide the context after having read through this. So most of these changes are just less ambiguous ways to reword things that the paragraph already says. The beginning first couple change, or first and third. The last one about who shall break a tie, that did happen 3 years ago, and we talked about the situation. It was a situation where essentially 2 school committee members supported one candidate, 2 school committee members supported the other candidate, and maybe there was a vacancy, so there were only 4 members. I can't remember, but the Charter Review Committee essentially could not think of a better way to do it, or necessarily a really strong argument for why the city council president shouldn't be the tiebreaker. I think it's weird, but I didn't have a better idea. So that was kind of where that ended up.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, as I was making point of that being an odd thing, I would have to agree with you. I don't know who you would have. You can't say, have the mayor decide. They're already a member. So so you can't say have a employee make the decision of the school department, because that's policy. So I can see where they were looking for an official that, might have to do it on the rarity. So I get it, because I don't know who I would pick either if there was that situation. Any other comments?
Tim has his hand up.
Oh, I can't see you. I'm sorry, Tim. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I can see why we want to clarify this. That phrase, "the vacancy shall be filled by the remaining members of the school committee," is very vague, and actually reading it the first time, I thought it meant that the committee members would just do that person's work until the next election. Obviously, it's not exactly that. I do think we should think carefully about this. I am the #1 booster of the school committee, and I want them to be as independent as they can possibly be. But we are talking about an elected position and who is going to take that position of authority. And I actually think that is something that is appropriate to lay out in the charter. I think at least a strong case can be made for laying out the mechanisms of power in kind of the highest level document that we have. I wonder why this is inconsistent. Like, why does the school committee do this one way, whereas the council does it another way? I believe the policy with the council is that the council president appoints someone to fill the vacancy. And I just wonder if that's a good enough system for the council. Why does the school committee need a different one? Yeah, I'm open to anyone who wants to comment on that. I don't have a strong opinion necessarily. This one just worries me a little bit.
Good points. Good points.
Well, I think this kind of goes back to what I had raised earlier about how I think our time frame for the city council is different. And the culture of the two bodies also seems to be very different. So if we're going to entertain a change like that, I would like to hear from members of the school committee instead of just making the change for them, because they did approve all of these changes.
Yes.
And we don't have to do everything tonight. I mean, if this one needs to wait and we move on to the next one, I think that's fine. But if we are going to make a very different change from what has been presented to the school committee, I would like them to have a chance to look at it.
Well, so you're recommending if we don't do this, that we wait?
Well, it sounds like Councilor Dolan is trying to propose an alternative to this language. And if that's the case, I think that's fine. But I want to run that by the school committee and give them the same courtesy that we gave them with this language.
I would say that Councilor Dolan was just trying to open it up for discussion to see if we could get alternative language, not necessarily He's just asking the question to see if anyone else was going that direction. Sorry if I'm talking for you.
Yeah, I certainly don't have language to propose at the moment.
No, but you make a good point. I mean, for us, the council president makes appointments and the chair of the school committee would never come in and be a tiebreaker. So I understand why you're saying that. It is a little strange.
Can I just ask a question?
Of course.
Wait, it looks like Councilor Dolan is speaking, but I don't hear him.
Yeah, sorry, I was muted. I found the language for the council if anyone would like me to read it.
Yeah, sure.
Sure.
Okay. If a vacancy should occur in the office of precinct counselor or counselor at large within 90 days prior to the next annual town election, it shall remain vacant until that election. Otherwise, the council president, with the advice of the committee chairs, may fill that seat by appointing a person residing in that precinct not applicable for those elected at large, for which a vacancy exists, subject to a two-thirds vote of the councilors present to serve until the next annual town election, at which time a person shall be elected to fill the unexpired term. So that's how it works on our side.
And some of that, Councilor Dolan, I think we worked on that piece because I remember talking about
Yeah.
the 90 days and so I think we.
And this is the published version on the website. If we made changes, it would not have gone through.
Right,
yet.
that's what I
don't
remember.
what they are.
I remember. I would have to. Do you know what section that is? What is it?
It is section 2-11 of the charter.
Article 2 here, 29. It's probably on. Oh no, that's.
In my version of the final charter report, that section does not have any changes.
Okay, so then then you are correct. That's how it stayed. We might have referenced it in discussions, but that's how it stayed. All right, what are we doing?
If I could.
Sure.
The times I've listened in on school committee meetings, it is a very different culture, and they've been through a lot of rough times. They've come up with the things they think will help them with their problems, and they've come up with language. I'm inclined to give them the changes they want, especially because I can see what they're aiming at, which is a little more control over the rules rather than have it fixed in the this thing that doesn't change for 10 years. So I would be in favor of giving them what they want.
Okay, Councilor Elmer, I'm going to go down the path that you just opened the door to. Does anyone have a problem with any of these suggestions? As the school committee has said they agree with them, Chair Peretti, I don't know if she brought it to everybody, but Chair Peretti said, we agree in a letter to us today that they agree with the changes as presented by the Charter Review Committee. Is there anyone that sees any of these changes, not in how they compare to council, because they're two separate entities, but does anyone have any problems specifically with any of these 4 asterisks in a way that it's goes against policy or it goes against Councilor Dolan?
If this comes to a vote, I will probably abstain. I'm not totally comfortable with it the way that it is. I'd also point out that the changes themselves did not come from the school committee. They were approved by the school committee. But it's not like the school committee wrote these recommendations and sent them to us. The charter commission wrote them, and then they were kind of school committee signed off. And
Councilor
that's a
Wheeler,
little bit of a different
Is
process.
that correct?
Councilor Wheeler.
That's correct. Very, very few committees or departments actually submitted their own changes. School committee actually, well, at least there were certain things I think suggested by members. In fact, there was the one that everyone cared about the most was the amount of time that they have to do their budget, but that's basically mandated by state law. So I think what Councilor Dolan just said is accurate.
All right, Councilor Dolan, let me go back to you, and I'm just trying to get direction. What portion of this would force you to abstain or not vote? I'm just saying, so is there a piece of this, or I'm just trying to get our next step? Who do we, we don't have to ask the school committee anything because this recommendation came from the charter committee, and that's our task. Not to get all departments to agree, it's to get the mayor and the committee's recommendations to jive. That's, because the mayor has to look at this. And the mayor, I'll go on to that point in a second. I learned something in yesterday's meeting, which was very helpful. But so Councilor Dolan, give me your thoughts. I'm just trying to figure out how to proceed. I guess that's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the second point, the second asterisk, where you actually allocate who decides who has power. That's the part that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with. Is it going to be catastrophic? Absolutely not. If you'd like to take it to a vote, I think that's fine.
I mean, this is a recommendation, so we have time to get a recommendation from this committee. And then when it hits the council floor, maybe we can get more information. We can reach out to Chair Peretti, and say, Councilor Elmer?
I was under the impression that the school committee had put forward these changes. If they didn't, I sort of have to ask where they came from and why we're getting into this.
Well,
can you shed any light on this? Yeah,
I would say we had a chair of the Charter Review Committee who was extremely sensitive to ambiguity when it comes to interpreting language, and I think that's an advantage. And so I would say that certainly the vacancy shall be filled by the remaining members of the school committee, even if that is everyone's intention. It's not written in a very clear way, and so I personally would recommend changing it. But whether or not this committee takes the charter's recommendation on how to do that, that's up to you guys.
if I could, these seem substantive enough that I would like to hear from the school committee, since this does affect how they pick new members.
Can I just, we sent this to the school committee.
Yeah, the whole thing, and we got a one-sentence reply. Doesn't,
So
yeah.
it didn't send the whole thing. We only have those things that we talked about. We have the changes to 4.2. We had the changes to one change to 4 section B, and then 4.6. There was only 3 changes. But we asked them to look at their section. They said we agree. There was only 3 sections to look at.
Fair enough.
So I feel like there is this middle point that we can get to where we build consensus on this committee. Because if people aren't comfortable with these changes, this is something we have to live with for a long time. And the next time it gets reviewed, there's no guarantee that this section is going to be taken up again. So I think it is important that all of us are as close to agreement as possible. But that being said, just like Councilor Elmer said, the school committee should look at it too. So if we want to change how vacancies are filled, this is not a hill that I'm going to die on. I'm happy to talk to people on the school committee and see how they feel about it. Or the other alternative is I would be comfortable voting on this as recommended because they did review this specific language.
Okay, that would be my thing. I have no problem moving this language forward. They had time to participate in the process. They were asked to participate in the process. The committee forwarded the recommendations of change. They say we agree with their recommendations. If we were going to change them, I agree with Councilor Gilmore and such. If we were going to change this piece, then I'd be a little more worried, but we're not. If we have not made any, specific changes, even to the point of council president on the bottom. So if someone would like to move this forward, I suggest we read it as a motion as they did. Councilor Jarvis?
Yeah, I think before you move on, Dan, a couple things I want to ask Chris Ford do something. And I know that Tim had his hands up. He probably
Oh,
can't.
yeah, no problem. I'm just.
I want to ask Chris. Chris, did anybody in the charter review the in accordance to the policies and procedures outlined by the school committee manual at the such time? I don't have any idea or any clue what their policy or their manual says. So by putting that in there, did you guys review that and say you're comfortable with what their policy, their manual says right now?
I can answer your question. My response is no. Each of us were assigned different pieces of this to investigate and go into. And so I think the question should be directed toward Councilor Wheeler. I think he would have more information on this than myself.
Very good. Wrong person then. Councilor Wheeler, please, if you could, please.
It was his article.
I had this and finance, so there was a lot to go through. But as I recall, it's not a change. But I don't recall what the language is, and maybe I can pull it up before you vote. But as I recall, it's already determined by their members. They vote essentially on given a few nominees. I forget how the procedure works. They take I forget if it's one vote or multiple votes.
Did you, in a procedure book, you're saying? Yes, not in the charter. Okay.
There is more detail in the procedure book than there is in the charter. And so that essentially is why we thought it was prudent to specify that.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Did you have something else, Councilor Jarvis, or was that? Councilor Dolan, back to you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean to belabor this. These were my last comments.
Don't worry about that.
So I am, as I said, very enthusiastic about giving the school committee as much autonomy as possible. I do think we have to recognize that ultimately we are the stewards of the charter, and the job of deciding how power works in Greenfield and who fills which vacancies does fall to us. And I think we should take that seriously. It's not necessarily a statement against the language that we have, but I don't necessarily think this is an area where we should punt to the school committee. Ordinarily, what I would do in this situation is take the language and come back with another suggestion. I am, of course, not going to be on this committee or on the council as of next month. So that doesn't really work in this case, which is new for me. So if folks want to move it to a vote and move it to full council, I'll abstain. I imagine it'll still pass.
Councilor Dolan, are you talking about at the two-starred asterisk? Is that still where you are?
Yeah.
Because they're suggesting to delete the phrase by the remaining members of the school committee and to add according to the procedures. Your fear is that by saying add it according to the procedures outlined in the school committee policy, that they're determining it on their own. Is that?
Yeah, it feels like a public body having a little too much power over its own functioning.
Mm-hmm.
And I would really want to compare this to other towns and see what they do. But of course, I haven't done that work and won't be at the next meeting. So like I said,
all right,
that's all I have to contribute, unfortunately.
No. Councilor Wheeler, I'm going back to you again on this. Do you know anything of Councilor Dolan's concern when it was addressed at the committee level?
No, I do not recall the detail of that discussion. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure. I would recommend that that if we're comfortable making the motion to move this as stated here, give the recommendation from this committee, and that will give us some time to maybe get that talked about before we see it on council floor. Councilor Elmer, was that
I was willing to make the motion if you want to hear it.
I would go right ahead and make the motion, sir.
I move that we amend section 4.6 filling of vacancies as suggested in the asterisks.
Do I have a second on that?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of forwarding a recommendation to make the changes according to the 4 asterisks in 4-6?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I will abstain.
We will send a positive recommendation with 1 abstention to full council. Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Wheeler, for jumping in on section 4 and helping us through that. And I thank Councilor Forgy for her patience. We are now finished section 4 at this point. That brings us to moving on to the beginning of section 6-8. And I just want to clarify a couple of things, just to let this committee know where we're at. So I have been sending each section to the attorney after we have forwarded our recommendation. The attorney looks at the recommendation, then sends it back to us, and then we put it on the full council. So it's gone through the first blush with the attorney before it goes to full council to make sure we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's correctly. What I was unaware of is as we send them to the attorney, the mayor also is reviewing them at that point. And the mayor has made no changes to what we have sent. So remember, in order to send this to the legislature, it has to have the mayor's sign off. So I was worried that we were going to have another lag. We finally finish this, then it goes to the mayor, and the mayor goes, hey, I don't like section 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're, scrambling. It's not the way. She is going to make recommendations as the attorneys will as we go. So I was very happy to know that we're really doing well moving this along. It doesn't always feel like that, but we are. All right. That brings us to section 6. And Councilor Forgy, where do we want to move with this? I know in the last meeting, we took care of 6.2, 6.3, 6.7, 6.8, 6.12, and 6.24. That's what we already did. So that leaves us with 6.9, 6.11, 6.13, 6.14, 6.16, 6.18. Okay. Are there changes? I know that you're ready to present 6.14. Where are we with 6.9, Board of License Commissioners? Were there many changes to 6.9? I'm trying to think of why we stopped on 6.9. We sent it to legal. Because that was the recommendation for an ordinance, correct? Yes. So that's why we didn't do 6.9. We don't have that. So Councilor Forgy, moving on, because 6 is a big piece, and we're going to take some time. And for those from the public that have been tuning in as we move through this, the reason that we list every section, just as a reminder, is we can't talk about a section if it's not on the agenda. Doesn't mean we're going to get to all of them. It just gives us the ability to go there if time allows. Some people have contacted me. In fact, I told them we would not be doing Article 7 tonight at all because we're just not going to get there. We might be in 6 for 2 more meetings. So if you're tuned in and you're going to talk, you want to listen about 7, rest assured, it is already 7 o'clock. We are not going to get to 7. We might not get till 7 till February. You know what I mean? But we will get there as soon as we can. Because we have to go through these 6s, and we have some old business to take care of and some new business to take care of. So we're going to move. Councilor Forgy, would you like to present one of the 6s at this point? You're muted.
Thank you. I think we should move forward with 614.
Okay.
All right.
We talked about that, and let's. If not, why don't we go ahead, Councilor Forgy, and present 614. 614, just for this is the Board of Assessors. The committee discussed this in a lot of detail. There was a lot of concerns of conflict of interest and all of those things, as we're aware of. So, Councilor Forgy, let you start with 614, modified language attached.
Okay. 614, the committee received information from the mayor and from our chief assessor at that time, Kimberly Mew, on the day-to-day running of the assessor's office.
Can you hold for 1 second, Councilor Forgy?
Sure.
Someone has something playing in the background. If you could mute that. The only people that I want their microphones open are my committee. Councilor Forgy?
Thank you. And there was quite a bit of discussion. It seemed to me, my professional opinion was that the Board of Assessors office really had some structural issues that needed to be addressed. And charter change was one of the, a charter commission. Is this coming from me? I don't think so.
Excuse me, I think it's coming from Sheila's microphone because I see it moving as you're talking to Chris. So that's who it's coming from, is Sheila.
You might.
Oh, sorry. My husband's making dinner. I'll mute.
Continue, Councilor Forgy.
Okay,
He's a good guy.
It seemed that the assessor's office had been decimated and in the previous administration, and that structurally in the charter there had to be some pieces that needed to be addressed. I had some very significant concerns about it, so I really dug into a lot of what was going on. And in cooperation with the mayor, we actually got a legal opinion which served us well in regard to what we were seeing in the assessor's office, in the structure of the assessor's office. So I put together some language that would change this. But before I get into that language, I wanted to tell you what the concerns were. The concerns were whether or not we should have a board of 3 elected assessors, or whether we should have a hybrid model, which is 2 assessors that are elected and 1 assessor that is appointed. Mass General Law allows for the hybrid method. It's up to the individual cities and towns to choose what they want for their assessing board. But it seemed to make better sense to me that all three members of the Board of Assessors would be elected officials and responsible directly to the public and not to the mayor. The legal opinion that we got actually reinforced that to some degree. It did weigh in and say that there is nothing illegal about a hybrid model. It did say that it has to be a majority of the Board of Assessors that would continue as elected officials. It also, we went ahead and we spoke about this as well. The chief assessor, which was also the appointed assessor by the mayor, was really in conflict in regard to the employment contracts that exist between the assessor and the town. And it was decided, I proposed that we go back to a 3-member elected board. And then we have a structure in the office with a chief assessor. And I think we need a field assessor. And I think we do need assessing clerks as well. I think there needs to be more staff in there. I understand there are budget considerations. Those are not the charter issues. The charter issue is how do we get this office up and running and not have it be a legal violation. So the legal opinion came back and it determined that the phrase in the charter, which states that the chief assessor will serve for an indefinite term, is not legal under Mass General Law, as all assessors need to have a definite term. All right. That the problem this creates is that the chief assessor is appointed and hired by the mayor under an employment agreement for an indefinite term, and now the employment agreement must be amended to state a term of employment for 4 years, which is the term for the assessor. It's subject to reappointment by the mayor at the end of 4 years. Further, it makes sense for the chief assessor to be hired at the same time the mayor is elected, which may mean adjusting the staggered schedule for election for the 2 elected assessors to be coordinated with an appointed assessor. Now, that sounds a little confusing, but basically what they're saying is that the chief assessor's opinion is covered by the SSEA contract, which is coming up on our council agenda that has been negotiated for. The chief assessor belongs to that bargaining unit. And therefore, they're a hired employee of the town of Greenfield, and they serve as an employee of the town of Greenfield. And they are not subject to 4-year terms. So that's where the conflict exists. You also, if you have a chief assessor and you do go ahead and make the chief assessor the mayor's appointment instead of an employee, you also run the risk that you'll lose your chief assessor when a mayor leaves office. So for all of those reasons, I did write some language. I do believe I passed that along to the clerk's office. I don't see it in any of the paperwork that you have got, but I wrote the whole standard of Article 16-14 as follows. Councillor Gwynn, I can read it, or do you want to have some more discussion from the committee, or I'll take questions?
Let me just set this up a little bit. Obviously, as I predicted, 6 is going to be a longer process, and it's not maintenance. These are changes. The changes were recommended in some cases by the committee, and they were worked on. On our agenda, Councillor Forgy, it says 6-14 Board of Assessors modified language attached. Councillor Dolan?
So that is not in our current agenda. I believe it is in the September agenda
Okay,
for A&M.
So,
I kind of went back
when it was first sent out.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
if anybody's looking for it.
But we did receive it, is what I guess point of, Counselor Forgy. So would everyone like Counselor Forgy to continue and she can bring us up to date? I think this is just not going to be a quick fix situation. So would you like to read that language? And then I would just like to find out where that has that language. That language was presented at the committee level or it was taken from the decisions at the committee level.
It was presented
Okay.
at the committee level.
Okay, perfect. Councilwoman, you're muted.
Would really help to be able to read along as Counselor Forgy reads it. Can anybody get their hands on that? Does anybody
I
have that?
probably have it here somewhere.
It was in an agenda sent to us on September 9th, if that's helpful.
All right,
And it's all the way at the bottom on the last page.
I'll give you a few seconds if anybody wants to follow along. Counselor Dolan, do you have a page number on that mess?
12.
Yes, it's 12.
Okay. I found,
your voice had changed rapidly from what I had remembered. Have you
I've located it. It's in red, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Counselor Forgy, will you, no objection for Counselor Forgy to proceed now with the recommended language? Counselor Forgy, back to you.
Okay. It's the Board of Assessors. It would be 6-14A. There shall be a principal assessor, parentheses, employee, who shall also be the head of the assessing division, parentheses, or department, within the Department of Municipal Finance, and a board of assessors consisting, it should be of 3 elected assessors. The principal assessor shall chair all board meetings, but shall not vote. The principal assessor shall be appointed pursuant to the provisions of the Department of Municipal Finances. I can't speak tonight, excuse me. Section 6.3 of the Charter. Power and authority of the assessing department. The Board of Assessors is responsible for the full and fair market valuation of real and personal property as of January 1 each year for the purpose of levying taxes. The Board of Assessors provides all necessary information to the mayor and the council in preparation for annual classification hearing. The Board of Assessor hears and decides all questions relating to the abatement levied to the abatement levied by it. The board has all other powers and duties and responsibilities that are given to this board by Mass General Law. It should be Chapter 41, Section 24 should be added onto that piece. So what I actually did was I just, I went what I would like to see happen, and I believe the council would, I would love the council to weigh in on this. I would like to see 3 elected assessors. I did call other cities and towns, particularly West Springfield. I had quite an interesting conversation with the chief assessor there. Since they are our sort of sister city in regard to this charter, it seemed to make sense to start with them. And they told me that they had originally, like we had adopted our charter from what they had proposed. They originally did the same thing that we did. They had 1 appointed assessor and 2 elected assessors. They found out just about 2.5, maybe 3 years ago, that was not working well for them. And the appointed assessor, who was also acting as chief assessor, left the employ of the city of West Springfield, and they actually changed their charter and went to a 3-member elected board. The purpose in presenting it this specific way is that I want it to be very discreet. I want the Board of Assessors are elected officials, and they, like us, answer to the taxpayers. If you put the mayor in the mix on the board itself, it kind of confuses whose responsibility, where your responsibilities and your loyalties lie. If you bring back a chief assessor, and that assessor runs the meetings and provides the information and runs the day-to-day, and you get a field assessor and other assessing people in the office. I think that professionalizes that whole department, and I think it makes the lines very, very distinguished between the authority of the mayor and the elected officials and their authority. And I think that that's pretty important, in my opinion, when we are looking at how we want to continue doing our assessing. The fact that we do have some issues and we need to get them addressed as soon as possible. I feel like this will be a strong move to boost up that assessing department. And I'm very much in favor of a strong mayor, but in this instance, I do feel there's a huge conflict. I think that the assessors should all be elected, and we should just keep the elected officials separate from the administrative government.
Councilor Forgy, let me just jump in for a second for some points of not clarification on what you said. As we're going through this, that's 614A. If we take a look at each of these A, B, C, D going down, can we do them in order, or do we have to hear them all first so they then sync? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because you just read A, correct? You didn't go into B.
I read A, and then I also put in B.
Right.
It was an A, I'm sorry, and then B, the principal assessor.
Right.
And so the other pieces I did not include. Term of office seems to, that can stay. I really don't.
And C is
C is
the changes are both in A and B, but you read them both just now. So I just want to be clear. And C and D have no changes.
well, C, unless otherwise provided, the assessor appointed by the mayor
That would be
shall be a full-time employee of the city entitled to all benefits. But I was looking to drop C, to get rid of C, because I feel it would be in a better interest of the people in Greenfield that we did not have an assessor appointed by the mayor.
Okay.
Only only a chief assessor
Right.
on an administrative level who's already covered by a contract.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was going through. Councilor Nolan, I just wanted to not talk about the specifics in me, just making sure we're following along for the whole section. Councilor Dolan?
Yeah, I have a logistical question as well. So your intention is to replace the entirety of 6-14 or to keep D?
Keep D.
Okay.
Okay.
And so the section labeled power and authority of the assessing department, would that become C?
Term of office.
No, because A would spell out what the Board of Assessors, let's see.
Consists of?
A would actually change the Board of Assessors from 1 appointed to 3 elected. And then it would say that the 2 elected at-large, or the 3 elected at-large voters would be staggered terms for 4 years, excuse me. Then it would say that B basically says they have all the powers conferred on the Board of Assessors by, general law. That stays the same. And then get rid of C, because it talks about an appointed assessor by the mayor and the term of office for the Board of Assessors. And we're talking about the board. We're not talking about the administrative
It says,
configuration.
currently it says elected members of the
Stay the
board.
same. Yeah.
So is that section labeled power and authority of the assessing department meant to be in the charter, or is that explanatory?
I'm sorry, say again?
There's a paragraph labeled power and authority of the assessing department. Is that supposed to go in the charter, or is that just an explanatory paragraph?
Oh, that should go in the charter too. I'm sorry.
Well,
I-
so
I
it
guess-
either needs to have a letter under 6-14, or it needs to be a new 6-15.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
This is rough,
So-
and I think that if you're gonna, if we're gonna tidy it up for voting, I have no problem with any of that.
Should that be 614C then? Or does D become C as Counselor?
No, I
Um,
think it should be C. Power and authority of assessing department should be C, and
Okay.
D should be term of office.
Okay, that would, Counselor Dolan, thank you for that. I knew you had a reasoning. I was just perfect.
He's the document
Totally
person.
clear
He's
now,
good.
thank you.
No, that's exactly what we needed at this point before we get into the language, I would call it. Let me open the floor a little bit. Counselor Elmer?
I'm impressed. I think you've done a good job of thinking this through and structuring it for us. I would ask, you said something about you think there ought to be a field assessor, and you understand that there are budgetary issues. Doesn't the assessor's office generate income? And if it was
Yes.
functioning properly, it would have enough money to pay for a field assessor? That seems,
Yes.
is that something that we should put in the charter?
No. I feel strongly that the structure of the Board of Assessors is what is referred to in the charter and not the daily operation of the charter. That's up to the mayor. And I think it's not a good idea, my opinion, in charter, to leave the sort of, it's not minutia because it's very important, but to leave the day-to-day running out of the charter, because then it becomes a funded mandate, and that's not the purpose of the charter. So that function belongs on the administrative side of government. We can strongly, as a council, suggest during the budget time, when we put things together, how we would, I'm going by what was in place when I was mayor. We had a 3-member board. Everybody tells me they were they were not elected, but I go back a long time and they were elected originally before the charter came in, and it seemed to be a very discrete function and worked very well. Then we had a chief assessor, an assistant assessor, a field assessor, and assessing clerks. So that office had a lot of staff in it, but we did not contract our services out. A lot of it was handled in-house, and we just started contracting services out when computer programs came in that would help us to do the work a little bit better and faster and everything else. But a lot of our own assessing was done right from that office.
Anyone else that has questions for Counselor Forgy? Sheila, I can't see you if
Yeah, I did want to speak. I hope the background noise isn't too bad. They're still in the kitchen cooking, but
No, we're good. We're good.
okay. So I feel like I have these like two like really important parts of my life where, I'm, on the city council and I'm an elected official and I'm accountable to the people who voted for me. And when I'm at work, one of the big things that takes up a lot of my time is I'm a union rep. And I really, I'm a diehard union supporter. And I feel like when we have 3 assessors and one of them is a union member and 2 of them are elected, it feels like you've got one person who's got this extra protection where there's a grievance process if they get disciplined. There's, they can make a huge mistake and get it talked down to a letter in their file. Whereas with an elected official, you have to make people happy to be able to keep that spot, unless someone's running unopposed. And I feel like having two different standards for the same function, that doesn't feel natural. I feel like all of them should be held to the same standard. So having all three of them be elected makes a lot more sense than have two of them be elected and have one person have all sorts of protection. And I feel like this is a position that needs to be elected. I mean, it's so close to people's quality of life here in town. And from hearing, what Chris is describing with, having this extra support staff and having, like a field assessor and if we could kind of undo some of the privatization that's happened in the last several years, I think this would be ideal. But what I'm concerned about here is how do we get back to that point? Because I feel like there's been this kind of scrambled egg situation. We can't just unscramble the egg, right? So what's the path forward if we make this change?
Is this my question?
I believe so.
Okay.
It's rhetorical. It could be anyone. I just want to know, what's going to be good for Greenfield.
Well, in my opinion, and my opinion is what's going to be good for Greenfield is to get everything as organized as we possibly can in regard to the assessor's office. I just want to remind people and say that this is a charter piece. We are talking only about the Board of Assessors. And I want them, it's my hope that all three members of the Board of Assessors will be elected officials and therefore be responsible to the public. And my opinion, again, having been mayor, and I believe in strong mayor, it doesn't make any sense to me to have one person appointed by the mayor. I mean, when you come right down to it, the mayor could appoint any citizen in Greenfield to be her representative and be an assessor. Okay, but now it's conflated so that we have. It was conflated. I'm hoping that this makes a change so that we have a very discrete line between elected officials and appointed people or people that are employees for the town of Greenfield. And so I would say the first step forward is, in my opinion, to go ahead and make this change about the Board of Assessors being three elected officials. And the other piece, I think, is really where we talk to the mayor about what we want to see happen, and budget time is an ideal time for that to happen if there's a will on the council.
Thank you. And we'll go back to everyone. Let me just jump in on where I think I haven't talked about my thoughts on this. I believe very simply that our three assessors should be elected. And that's what this boils down to. This is the starting point. We can't change all the other stuff because this deals with the board. This is saying we have three elected assessors and we're putting a procedure to make all three elected. I'm in full favor of this portion because this is in our control and this is the time that we should put it forward. That's a charter change. That's the kind of thing we've been looking for. I think it's what is necessary at this time.
Well, I think my question though is, does it tie the mayor's hands? Because I don't feel like that's fair, for one, and for two, she might veto if she feels like it's not something she can do.
That's true.
That's my only concern. I just want to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
I have no idea. I've never been the mayor except for 10 days, but I never, I don't think that we're tying her hands. I think she has plenty of time to react to the new structure. Remember, charter changes, we put them forward, They go to the legislature then votes. It took 2 years last time. Then it comes back and then it has its approval. And the mayor, whoever the mayor is, always gets a chance to weigh in by saying, I don't accept this. And then we're back where we are. I think the move is, personally, I think the move right now is to go with this change to say 3 elected officials and see where it goes. Councillor Elmer and then Councillor Dolan.
Dolan was first.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Dolan. But you're muted.
Thank you. Mainly, I want to thank Councillor Forgy for doing this work. This is one of those things that is, you know, a pretty simple change that's going to make a big difference. And I think this work is really valuable. I have 3 minor questions about the first sentence in the section that's labeled in the draft power and authority of the assessing department. I think, first of all, the emphasis will be stripped out. So while I agree with you that full and fair market value should be emphasized, that's not going to make it into the final version, I would imagine. And I wonder about putting that in there because that is the law. I mean, that's Massachusetts state law. Is my understanding is that all assessment has to be done to full and fair market value. I think my most substantive question, though, is the language now says the board is responsible for full and fair market valuation of real and personal property as of January 1st. And I know that contradicts with the way that things are actually done, which is on a cycle where properties are assessed. I think it's every 3 years. I could be mistaken about that. So are we setting them up for failure a little bit by saying they're responsible for all of that every January 1st when there's no way that that's going to get done, just given the volume? And I would agree it would be valuable to hire more assessors so that we can do more of that work. But I know that that's not the way that it's worked in my time on council.
So I can respond by saying the power and authority language, actually fair and full market valuation is the law. That's what it says in the law. And when you talk about January 1 of each year for the purpose of levying taxes, we are always a year behind in our levies. So that piece is okay. I'm just working on some language here and doing this and everything else, but I agree with you. If it's already stated in law, don't repeat it. That's redundant. So,
and to be clear, there's nothing in there that would compromise my full-throated support of this. Absolutely support 100%. Just ask a question.
Councillor Elmer, you.
I just wanted to clarify something. Councillor Gilmore, the way she presented it sounded like she thought there were only 3 on the Board of Assessors. And that's right, the 3 elected officials. And then there's a professional principal assessor, or whatever you called it. That's a different kind of position. That's the one who runs, that's the person who runs the department. You know, that I have no problem with professional people being protected by unions. I don't see a problem with a discrepancy between the elected and this professional person.
actually, if I may, I don't mean to jump ahead of a counselor. I'm sorry. Is there another counselor?
No. We'll go back. Councillor Gilmore might have a follow-up, but Councillor Forgy, that thought.
I would like to hear from Chris before I weigh in.
Okay.
Thanks.
So if I go back to the writing, the thing that I wrote up and everything else, basically on A, there should be really only one thing that it says, because let me just look at this for a second here. Any talk about a principal assessor employee should not appear in the charter. I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking of at this point. And then it should just basically say a board of assessors consisting of 3 elected assessors is really all we need, unless we want to talk about the internal pieces of the assessor's office. And then that, I believe, would be an ordinance. That would be an assessor's ordinance, like the principal assessor shall chair all the meetings, but shall not vote. That seems to me to be procedural. An ordinance, I don't know, but I think I think I'm looking at what I've written now, and there are certain things that should just be stated, and that's it. And then all the rest of the administrative side, it should not be in the charter. That's administration work. Charter should just set up and talk about the Board of Assessors.
Yeah, I think the point that I was trying to make when I was talking about one of these people being an employee of the town who has the protection of a union
Yes.
is that the other 2 are elected and they have no protection whatsoever. And I don't think that elected officials deserve to have that kind of protection. If the voters don't like the job that you're doing, they should have the opportunity to vote for a different person. Whereas the other person would have just cause. And I believe in just cause for workers. I absolutely do. I spent a lot of time working on this, but I feel like this is more of a political position than a working class kind of a position. So I agree with her assessment that this should be 3 elected folks and not 2 elected and 1 appointed with just cause protection.
Councilor Gilmore, I agreed with what you were saying. Let's put all of our assessors on the same playing field. 3 elected, and then we're not doing that. I would agree. Councilor Jarvis.
Okay, I'm just switching back to Chris's page here, so I don't know if my video goes off or not, but can't we just say that we'll strike everything in A that Chris presented us and just have it say the Board of Assessors will or shall consist of 3 elected assessors. Plain and simple, the rest of the language goes away.
Yep. Well, you have to say what their terms are.
Yeah, and their terms are right.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that would be
I agree
it.
with you. Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I'm proposing there.
So,
Just
so
straighten that out.
we no longer have a principal assessor?
No, we do.
I think that person would function the same way as the council president or the chair of the school committee. Someone is going to have to chair that meeting.
Well, if you have 3 elected officials, someone can, the other 2, it's a quorum. That's what they're after. What the whole crux of this issue is that we have a legal opinion that basically says that you can't be an employee of the town of Greenfield, all right, that works under a contract when and you work under a contract, with indefinite term. I mean, you either have to be terminated or you have to leave, as opposed to an elected official that has a finite term. So that's really the legal issue. That's the issue. You have to have one or the other. You can't have the person, like I said, the mayor could turn around. If we left it as appointed, the mayor could appoint, I don't know, Margot. The mayor could appoint Margot and say, you're the other assessor. And then we have 3 people, but we still have to have a chief assessor or a principal assessor, whichever one you want to call it. They're all sort of interchangeable pieces here, who would have to sort of, sit there and, be present at the meeting, run the meeting and everything else, and let the other assessors vote. So you could do it either way. There could be a chairman of the Board of Assessors, elected officials, or you can have the principal assessor come in. That would be an administrative part of their function. So, okay, I'll be quiet now.
Can I say that I'm totally confused now? I thought that that what you'd written and read there was about 4 people.
No.
three of them elected, and then a separate person who's an employee. I'm wrong about that?
Well, you're not wrong about it, but the principal assessor, I'm gonna have to think about this.
Oh, this is related to the point that I brought up earlier, where we're going to need staff who are employees of the town to do some of this legwork, which is separate from the board. And that's why I was concerned about tying the mayor's hands, because I don't want to put this in like we were talking about unfunded mandates. If you're talking about having a number of staff, because my understanding is that the board of assessors, I don't know if they get a stipend or not, and if they do, it's probably
do.
not more generous. Is it more generous than ours?
I have no clue. I think it's about the same. I'm going to go out
Yeah.
on a limb and guess and say it is the same, but they do get a stipend.
So yeah, so a small stipend is great, but you can't expect someone to do full-time work for $2,000 a year. It's illegal. So, yeah, there would be staff, and that's kind of tied up in this whole thing. Is there's this assumption that there's staff. That's why I was concerned earlier.
I have to think about this, Phil.
Can I
Can I-
suggest that you do a new version? That, I mean, you think about it and because it's hard now for us to make a decision about this when the ground is shifting.
Well, what I am actually looking at right now is I am looking at, other pieces in section 6, like 618 Council on Aging, for instance. It doesn't really go into any detail about what employees should be in the assessors, in the Council on Aging. That's administrative. So what we're dealing with right now is the title Board of Assessors.
Yeah.
And that's where the conundrum comes in, because when you have this hybrid piece, you have an employee that's acting, and I don't think the Mass General Law language was interpreted correctly. I think that if you have 3 employees, if you have 3 assessors, board of assessors, you can have them elected, or you can have 1 appointed and 2 elected. And that's the number that's correct for the size of our city. It can be more in Boston. I mean, it's different. But if one of those assessors is appointed by the mayor, they cannot be an employee of the town. That's where it kind of broke down.
So look, can I just stop everyone there for a second? I think we need to go back to the thing. That's the ruling you got. You got a legal opinion that said that third member cannot be an employee. That's what the legal ruling that we have says. You are fixing that by saying the 3 board of assessor, the board is going to be elected.
Correct.
The chief assessor will be an employee. The law has told us they can't be part of that board because they're a employee and they can't be. We need to do nothing more than vote this through as you read it and fix the legal part, which is to say our 3 should be voted. They can't be employees. That would be the change you made. That's what we have to move forward. We have to be in compliance with the law that says the 3 members are elected. They can't be employees. So that's the point.
Can I jump in with a clarifying question?
Of course.
And I agree with you 100%, Councilor Gwynn. My understanding, and it's been a while since I read this section of MGL, is that chief assessor is like, or principal assessor is like tree warden, in that it is a position that must be filled in a city. but there's no statement about how that works in an administrative capacity or whether that person has another job. But someone has to fill that role in the community. So that is not tying us to a specific organizational structure or a necessarily being a full employee even, but someone must have that title. And I think that's okay. That's not an unfunded mandate. That's not tying the mayor's hands. That's how I understand it. But yes, I agree. We should move this forward. It's very important and it's very well done.
I would agree. Councillor Forgy,
Yes,
your original version that you were backtracking on a bit,
yes.
what were your concerns that you were backtracking? Because I think you're overthinking it.
Yeah, I think I am too.
I think
And, yeah.
you were ready to put it forward, and I don't see anything that you said that goes against anything that you said. So structure is okay in the charter. Mandates aren't okay.
Yes.
Structure is fine.
Yes.
You gave it structure. Structure is okay. 3 elected assessors with some structure. That follows everything we've done in every department.
So how about if we do this? If we just in the red memo, basically the point that Councillor Dolan made, that's all Mass General Law. That's all taken from Mass General Law. So let's go back to
We don't need the redundancy.
right. Let's go back to 614. I agree with what Ed said in paragraph A, which is they're all elected and they're for staggered terms. Then we go down to item B, which is the Board of Assessors shall have all the powers, blah, blah, blah. And we just, there was a little footnote that we should check ordinance as well to see. So that might be another thing for council to do further on, check ordinance. Get rid of C, okay?
Replace it with powers and
Yeah, replace it, get rid of C, replace it with D. The only question I would have is principal.
no, stop there, Chris.
Well-
You were replacing C with your version of power.
No, I don't think we need that because I think
Okay.
B, item B addresses that, all powers.
Okay,
which
so
conferred on the
power
Board
and
of
authority
Assessors.
we don't need, which is what
No.
Councilor Dolan referred
No.
to.
That's right. We don't need that.
All right, and D stays as is.
And D stays as is. And the only thing. Well, the other piece, that this is what Phil's saying, and so I understand. If you go to B in the red memo, right, it says the principal assessor shall be appointed pursuant to the provisions of the Department of Municipal Finance, Section 6-3 Charter. Because it's actually part of the Department of Municipal Finance already, and it does fall under the umbrella.
So if that stays there, then it puts it in the charter that we have to have one, and that takes care of what Phil said. You get 3 elected, and then 6-3 tells us we have to have one that's employed.
Yes. Done.
Good.
Yeah.
All right, here's my problem. You were talking about that. We need someone to be able to read this that's not you. You know, so we have a motion that someone's going to make. Does someone have an idea how we can get this motion put forward by one of the committee?
Can I prompt them?
I will give it a shot.
All right. What I would recommend, Ed, is if you have the red version in front of you, to see what Chris has omitted from the red version and then give it a shot.
Okay. So this is what I think Chris has omitted. Under, we will rewrite Article 6-14, Board of Assessors or assessing department to read
Can I
as
stop you right
follows.
there, Ed? Let me just stop you. Is this the motion or is this leading to the motion?
No, this is just, I'm just clarifying what
Okay,
Chris said.
perfect. All right, go ahead then.
A would say, I think Chris wants to say a board of assessors consistent of, the board of assessors shall consist of 3 elected assessors. That's it, under A. B would be
Go
the
ahead.
principal assessor shall be appointed and pursuant to the provisions of the Department of Municipal Finances, Section 6-3 of the Charter. Is that correct, Chris?
I would say, this is what I would suggest. Go back to your white copy. Go back to your white copy.
Okay, got it.
Okay. Go ahead and start 614 Board of Assessors. And that's where I've gone, the first sentence, 3 members, and then you cross everything else out. And then it says elected at large by the voters for staggered 4-year terms. Staggered terms of 4 years. That
So
would
the
be,
board of assessors consisting of 3 elected members,
yes,
elected, I'm just paraphrasing, elected members,
Right.
elected at large by the voters for the staggered term of 4 years.
yes,
Is that everything you need in there?
yes.
Okay.
B stays the same.
The Board of Assessors shall have all powers which are conferred on Board of Assessors by the general laws and such additional powers and duties as may be provided by this charter by ordinance or otherwise?
Correct. The asterisks there only talk about, if you follow it along, the asterisks are the committee recommends the council review what language it believes is needed to deal with the concerns, the framework, and everything else on an ordinance.
Well, then that's fine. We can address that when we're
Okay.
finally done with this project.
Done. Get rid
And
of
then
C.
C is nothing. You're asking to strike C
Strike C and replace it
with term of office.
With what's now D.
with item B from the red sheet.
Yep, I got you. I follow you now. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. And then D stays the same.
Okay, so I'm gonna give this a shot.
Wait,
Okay.
Can I
Oh,
interrupt? you?
Hold on, Counselor Jarvis, Counselor Almer.
If you pick up B the way it is in red, it sounds like it's ambiguous. It sounds like the principal assessor could be one of those 3 elected officials. And I
It can't be because by law, you can't be a town employee, Phil. By law. We already got the legal opinion on it.
Maybe it would be better if it said a principal assessor rather than the principal assessor.
perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else, Phil?
Nope.
Counselor Jarvis.
Okay. I'm gonna try to give this a shot. So I'm gonna make a motion that section 614 Board of Assessors is stated as there shall be a Board of Assessors consisting of 3 members to be elected at large by the voters for a staggered 4-year terms. B will stay the same as written in the charter. I will strike C, and in its place, a principal assessor shall be appointed pursuant to the provisions of the Department of Municipal Finance, Section 6-3 Charter, and D will stay the same. Boy, that's hard to say at this time of night, but that's what I propose.
I'll second that.
Okay, the motion's been made and seconded. Some discussion. There was just a little elected at large by the voters for staggered terms of 4 years.
Yeah, I figured I left something out. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that sentence would remain the same because there's from this.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Councillor Dolan, Councillor Gilmore.
Sounds great.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, this will go forward with a positive unanimous recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that it for, that's it for 614, correct?
Yes.
Okay. First of all, let me just stop here for a second and say, Councillor Forgy, thank you for your work on this. Councillor Dolan said it earlier. It has been, this is grueling. I am going to recommend that we stop going through additional sections this evening. We will save the next one that I've asked Councillor Forgy, who's worked on it, just to give you a preamble. Our next will be Public Safety 611, okay, which is going to take a lot of time, and I didn't want to do them both on the same evening. What I would like to do is Councillor Gilmore has some new business, and then we have some old business on a legal opinion, and I need Councillor Forgy here for when we go to that legal opinion, because it's very much just an opinion. So Councillor Gilmore, new business.
I'm so flattered that you remembered. I just wanted to let you know that I looked into the opt-in, opt-out of remote participation that was discussed prior to this council. I believe it was 2017, but it had originally gone to appointments and ordinances. So I just wanted to let everybody on the committee know that I'm gonna submit that so it goes to committee chairs next month.
Excellent. That's good. Anything else, Councillor Gilmore?
No, I just think that this is going to help facilitate when we go back to in-person meetings, whether it be sooner or later. I mean, the expiration date is April. And if there are people who still have concerns related to, the pandemic or any kind of health concerns, this is going to be something that's going to allow people to participate more fully in our meetings if they do need to be remote. And in case anybody is concerned, this is something where you would have to contact the chair. So the council president or the vice president, if the president's going to be absent, and you would have to let them know that there's a valid reason why you're participating remotely, but it would be an option.
Very good. No, thank you for working on that, and look forward to seeing that come forward. Did you have anything else, Councillor Gilmore, under new business?
No, that was just it. I just wanted I wanted people to know so that they could sleep on it.
Oh, yeah. Excellent. I didn't want to jump to something else if you had additional pieces. Anything else under new business from anyone else? Under old business, there was a legal opinion that came under, I'm looking at this, the status of legal opinion in regards to Article 2, Legislative Branch, Section 2-8, officers elected by City Council or Clerk. We don't have an opinion on that yet, so that's still, but we do have an opinion that came back on Articles, is it 2-3? What was it, Councillor Forgy?
2-3, Section B.
Okay.
Director of Municipal Finance. So I think that the language was basically approved of. Just a small change. Instead of bylaw, it was ordinance. However, there was something else that was added, and I totally agree with this. It's really about the separation of different money functions under the umbrella of municipal finance. So it's basically distinguishing and saying that if the director of municipal finance acts or serves as a city accountant, to, with respect to any portion of the specific fiscal year, then the Director of Municipal Finance shall not serve in any of the other 3 specified positions or portion of, or in any way with respect to the specific fiscal year. So basically what the attorney is telling us, it's that it's a separation of municipal powers, because the accountant is responsible for a lot in their duties under the law. But it also interacts with the treasurer collector's office, the assessor's office, other offices, other money offices. So it would be considered, I would think, a conflict of interest for the municipal finance director to act as the accountant and then act as all the other things as well. So that's what that language is spelling out for all of us. It's a separation of all of those money duties and responsibilities so that one person doesn't end up with the whole financial responsibility.
So what was the recommendation?
The recommendation was to add that language at the end of 6.3b. There was language. And I just read that, but let me.
No, that's all right. Thank you for that. Any discussion on this? I feel that if the attorney is suggesting this language to give the separation as desired, then we don't always have to follow exactly what the attorney says. I mean, sometimes attorneys are opinion versus law. So I would tend to think that we probably should, these have all, except for this one, they're all going to be on the full council agenda. I would like to have these recommendations ready to go to the full council on this on 2-3. So discussion?
Looks okay to me.
Councillor Dolan, Councillor Gilmore, any points on this?
Seems like a really good idea.
I like that.
No,
opinion.
I'm in agreement.
Okay. Who would like, Councillor Jarvis, I might have lost you for a moment.
You did not. I'm all set. I had to shut my video off for a minute.
Okay, no, I just wanted to make sure I couldn't pick you back up. Any concerns with adding that language as recommended?
None at all.
Should someone make that in form of a motion? And if we don't want it, I would say you could paraphrase by saying language as recommended by city attorney or such.
I'd like
In
to
this
make a motion that we accept the
2-3B.
language presented to us by the city attorney.
And that would be for section 2-3, letter B.
And I'll second that.
To be added to the section.
Is anyone having trouble hearing Ed?
I am, but I thought maybe my internet was petering out.
No, I lost him completely. Did anyone else lose? Councillor Jarvis, can you speak to me just in general? I'm going to hold your motion for a moment. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Yeah, I was broke. You kind of broke up for a minute, but yeah.
We lost something. I need you to repeat that entire motion, please, starting from I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, hold on here. I make a motion that we forward to the city council the language presented to us by the city attorney for section 2-3 as presented.
I'll second that.
And that, Councillor Ford, just a reminder that was 2-3 section B?
Yes, that's correct.
B.
Correct.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We will send a positive unanimous recommendation to adopt 2-3 section B as suggested by council. Is there any other old business? I guess it's not really old business, but I just wanted to say that this could be the last meeting of this A&O board as it is structured at the time. As we know, Councillor Dolan is moving on. I just want to say, I, at times through this year, have felt that different parts of this council were a bit tough. I think this A&O board was one of the best I ever worked with. We got the job done. You did your homework. You were prepared. If one of us staggered and couldn't be here, there was people to step up. We spread around the work of everything from reading these things to researching them. It was a pleasure to chair this committee. I thank you all for your work. If I have the opportunity to chair it again, I hope I can have a group that works with a common goal and doesn't let their personalities and opinions, change what we do. So thank you all very much for that. I appreciated each and every one of your opinions all through this process. It's been a heck of a year trying to get through these charter changes. I've been on a lot of committees, and this one, I used to say I never want to be on Ways and Means because they just work. They just have too much to do. And this year, when they asked me to do A&O, I knew it was going to be a lot, but it's been steady. So,
So moved.
motion to adjourn.
And thank you for your leadership.
Second, Jarvis.
The motion's been made. All in favor?
Aye.
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 We will adjourn this meeting at 8:05 p.m. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
See you soon.